The year is 1499. Along the rugged cliffs of Modon, a bell rings one last time across a valley that will never hear it again. Inside the convent of St. Theodora, 23 women kneel in prayer. Their lips move together, forming words they've repeated every morning for years. But this morning, the words taste different, like ash, like farewell. Beyond the stone walls, the horizon bleeds red. Not from sunrise, but from the banners of an empire that has swallowed kingdoms whole. The Ottoman army doesn't march. They flow like a river of steel and fire, erasing everything in their path. Abbess Helena clutches a silver crucifix that has survived 3 generations. Her hands tremble, not from fear, but from the knowledge of what is coming. They all do. What they cannot know, what history rarely records, is that death might have been mercy. What happens next won't be found in textbooks. It was buried, erased, hidden beneath centuries of silence. The Ottomans' conquest is more than territorial. It is methodical, calculated. The question isn't whether you can handle the truth, it's whether you are willing to remember it. Certain stories vanish from history, while others are endlessly retold. You are here to uncover one the world forgot. Through missionary letters, Ottoman state records, and testimonies buried in Venetian archives, every view, every subscription helps resurrect a lost voice. Now, we return to the convent, where the bell has stopped ringing and the doors are about to break. To understand what happened to these women, you must understand the machine that consumed them. 17 years earlier, in 1482, Constantinople fell. The jewel of Christendom, standing for over a millennium, destroyed in 53 days of cannon fire and blood. Hagia Sophia, once the greatest cathedral in the world, stripped of its crosses within hours. Mosaics plastered over, bells melted down. Within a week, the call to prayer echoed where hymns had sung for 9 centuries. Sultan Bayezid II stood in the nave and declared it a mosque, not because he needed another house of worship, but because he understood what most conquerors never grasp. You do not defeat a people by killing them, you defeat them by erasing who they are. The Ottomans conquered land, but they also conquered identity. Every surviving church bell, monastery and nun praying in Latin is a declaration, an act of defiance, proof the old world refuses to die. And every woman who clings to prayer is a reminder that faith can outlast armies. So the Sultan made a decision: if they will not convert, they will vanish. Not through massacre. Massacre creates martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written, stories told, the dead become immortal. The Ottomans perfected something far more subtle, something that leaves no songs, no stories, no memory: erasure. By 1499, this strategy had been tested across the empire. Greek monasteries along the Peloponnese, Serbian convents in the Balkans, Armenian churches in Anatolia. Some were converted, others abandoned, but the pattern remained. First came the offer, then silence. The convent of St. Theodora, perched on a hill far from garrisons, was about to become another experiment, another footnote in an empire's expansion. But these women were not footnotes. They were not warriors. Their weapons were rosaries. Their armor, faith. Most had never seen a soldier, held a blade, or imagined they would need to. Abbess Helena had led the convent for 14 years. Before that, she tended the sick in a village long swallowed by plague in 1480. She sought the convent not to escape the world, but to understand it. Sister Theodosia, 19, had taken her vows 2 years prior. Her hands still bore the calluses of her family farm. She joined the convent after raiders killed her family. The convent had been her only refuge. Sister Kyra, 70, had survived 2 abbesses, an emperor, and countless wars. She had long stopped fearing death. None of them had faced this. If this moment in history doesn't stir you, you are missing the lesson our ancestors died to teach. The most dangerous act in the face of power is refusing to forget who you are. Then the first cannonball strikes, just after dawn, not the chapel, the bell tower. The sound is apocalyptic. Stone explodes, iron shrieks, the bell shatters mid-swing, pieces raining onto the courtyard, where sisters once grew herbs for healing. The same hands that tended the plants now cover their ears, trembling, Abbess Helena doesn't scream. She stands, crucifix raised, and begins to sing, Kyrie Elas, Lord have mercy. One by one, the others join. 23 voices rise against the roar of an empire. But empires do not listen to songs. By midday, the gates are breached. Soldiers pour into the courtyard, not with swords drawn, but ledgers, quills, inkpots. They move like clerks, not conquerors. To the Ottomans, these women are assets. A translator steps forward, a Greek man familiar with the hills. His voice shakes as he reads from a scroll. By order of Sultan Bayezid II, all subjects of conquered territories must submit. Those who convert will be protected. Those who refuse will face the consequences of rebellion. Abbess Helena steps forward, her face calm, almost serene. She speaks not to the soldiers, but to the translator, in Greek so clear everyone understands. Tell your sultan that we have already given our lives to a king. We have nothing left to surrender. The officer in charge, Hassan Pasha, whose name appears in Ottoman military records from the 1499 Modon campaign, does not respond with anger. He responds with a smile, chilling because he knows something the nuns do not. The Ottomans have perfected the art of breaking people without killing them. That night, the women are locked inside their own chapel. No food, no water. Only darkness and the sound of soldiers outside, laughing, eating, living, while they wait to see who will break first. 2 younger sisters from the nearby coastal village begin to weep in the corner. Their sobs echo off the stone walls. But Sister Theodosia, barely 20, begins to whisper a psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Then another, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. One by one, the weeping stops. The Ottomans had underestimated them. These women had spent their lives preparing for suffering, fasting, vigils in the cold, hours of silence, submission to something greater than themselves. What the soldiers saw as torture, the nuns saw as discipline. But Hassan Pasha is patient. He has seen this before, in Greek monasteries along the Peloponnese, in Serbian convents, in Armenian churches. Faith is like a candle, he once wrote in a letter to the Sultan, still preserved in the Topkapi archives. It burns brightest just before it dies. He is about to test that theory. On the second day, the doors open. A servant enters with bread and water, real food, clean water. He sets it down without a word and leaves. The nuns stare. Their throats are dry, their stomachs hollow. The younger sisters look to Helena, desperation in their eyes. Sister Kyra, the eldest, speaks first. They want us to take it, to feel gratitude, to soften. Helena nods. Then they fast. They do not touch the food. By the third day, their lips are cracked and bleeding. Their hands shake. The younger sisters can barely stand, but they do not break. Hassan Pasha watches from the courtyard, arms crossed. Impressed, frustrated, perhaps a flicker of respect passes across his face. But strategy does not change. On the third day, the doors open again. This time, it is Hassan himself. He speaks in Turkish. The translator follows, like a shadow. You are not criminals. You are not enemies. You are simply mistaken. The Sultan is merciful. He offers new lives, new names, protection. Speak the words, or come with us to Constantinople. There, the Sultan will hear your case. Perhaps he will be moved by your conviction. He pauses. The road is long. The weak do not survive it. It is not a threat. It is a promise. Helena looks at her sisters, some barely conscious, some praying with eyes closed, some staring at the stone floor for strength. She turns back to Hassan. We will walk. The smile returns to his face. Good. We leave at dawn. That night, the nuns hold each other in darkness. No one speaks. But Theodosia begins to hum a hymn from Vespers. One by one, the others join. Outside, some soldiers pause, some look away. One of them, years later, will tell his grandson about the women who sang themselves through the night. But that story will be forgotten. At dawn, on the fourth day, 23 women walk south toward the coast, hands bound, on dusty roads under the relentless sun. No carts, no horses, only their feet, the dust and the burning sky. By the second day, Sister Irene, 62, collapses. Her knees have failed her. Magdalena and another nun, Sister Anna, lift her and carry her for 3 miles. At night, she is unconscious. By morning, she is gone. They bury her by hand with whispered prayers. Hassan Pasha notes in his ledger, 22 remain. On the fourth day, it happens again. Sister Callista, who has not spoken since the siege, simply sits in the middle of the road and closes her eyes. They leave her there. By the seventh day, when they reach the port of Modon, only 18 remain. But something unexpected happens. The nuns stop weeping, stop begging, they walk in silence. Not the silence of defeat, but of women who have already made their choice. Sister Helena leads them at the front, even with her hands bound. On the morning of the seventh day, Hassan calls for her. She is brought to his tent alone. What happens next is not in Ottoman records. It survives only in a Venetian merchant's letter discovered in 2003 in Dubrovnik archives. I saw them bring her back at dawn. She could not walk. Her eyes, God forgive me, were open, but she was not inside them. They dressed her in silk and paraded her through the camp as a convert. But I passed close enough to hear her lips moving. She was still praying in Latin. She had not broken. They took her body and left her soul to wander. This is the Ottoman strategy history does not teach. They did not want martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written, stories are told. The dead become saints. They wanted ghosts. Women who would walk, eat, breathe, but never be whole again. Living proof that rebellion was futile. Sister Helena walked with them the rest of the way to the coast, never speaking again, never looking anyone in the eye. The younger sisters wept, the older ones prayed harder. At the port, they were loaded onto a galley. Not a passenger ship, a vessel designed for control, slaves, prisoners, cargo. The nuns were chained to benches, wrists locked to iron rings. A ship's manifest discovered in 1987 at Istanbul's Topkapi Palace Museum lists them not by name, but by number: religious captives, female, 18, destination, imperial household, purpose, domestic service and conversion. The word service does a lot of work. The voyage lasts 12 days. The sea is merciless. Storms lash the deck. Salt spray stings cracked lips. The ship pitches and rolls. Women who have never seen the ocean vomit until there's nothing left. At night, the youngest, Sister Theodosia, whispers psalms beneath her breath. Faint, almost lost against the crashing waves. But the other prisoners, Greeks, Serbs, Italians, men and women chained nearby, turn their heads to listen. For a moment, the sea seems still. When the ship finally enters the Bosphorus, the sisters see the skyline of Constantinople rise before them. Domes, minarets, walls that seem to stretch forever. The city gleams in the dawn light like a blade. For centuries, it had been called the City of the World's Desire. Now it will become their cage. From the docks, their march winds through narrow streets lined with merchants, soldiers, and slaves. People stop to stare. Christian nuns among captives are rare. Even in empire built on conquest, they are led past ancient walls, through the imperial district, past gardens where fountains sing and peacocks scream. And then, in the shadow of Hagia Sophia, the great church now a mosque, they are forced to kneel. As the call to prayer echoes from the minarets, one sister whispers, "We are home, but it is no longer ours." They are taken to the palace, but not to grand halls, not to courtyards, where ambassadors walk and viziers conspire. They are led down stone steps that spiral into darkness, through tunnels that smell of damp and decay, to a place that officially does not exist. Beneath Topkapi Palace, a network of tunnels snakes unseen. Storage rooms, servant quarters, corridors winding through bedrock like veins. In the farthest corner, sealed for centuries, a room with no official purpose. During 2011 restoration work, archaeologists broke through a false wall. What they found froze them, scratches in the stone, barely visible. Crosses, dozens of them, crude, made with fingernails or shards of broken pottery. Beneath the crosses, 4 words in Latin, lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. This was their chapel. For months, maybe years, these women lived beneath the palace, working as silent servants by day, scrubbing floors, washing linens, tending fires for rooms they would never enter. At night, after the palace slept, They gathered in this forgotten chamber to pray. No priest, no altar, no Bible, just memory. They recited psalms by heart, verses half forgotten, reshaped into survival prayers. They whispered hymns so faint the stone barely caught them. They held communion with bread stolen from kitchens, water drawn from palace wells, and they carved their faith into stone one scratch at a time, knowing no one would ever see it. Sister Theodosia became their voice in the dark, the girl who had whispered psalms on the ship, who had carried Sister Irene on the road, who had refused to look away when they dressed Sister Helena in silk. Archaeologists found her mark too, a small bird scratched into the corner of the wall. Beside it, 23 lines, one for each sister, though only 11 complete. The rest trailed off into nothing. They used broken pottery for candle holders, scraps of linen for altar cloths, shards of shattered mirrors for crude crosses. In this secret chapel, they gathered each night. No hymns, no sermons, just whispers. Each woman kneeling, sharing a memory, her home, her church bell, the warmth of bread before dawn. These became their new psalms, offerings to a God who still listened in the dark. A Venetian prisoner, held for ransom in 1502, wrote of strange voices echoing beneath the harem, women singing in Latin to a God not of the empire. Historians dismissed it as superstition until the chapel was found. And here is what breaks your heart. Halfway up the wall, the scratches become erratic, desperate. The lines deepen, as if carved with more force, more urgency. Then, nothing. Ottoman records from 1505 mention a cleansing of palace staff under the new sultan. Anyone deemed unproductive or resistant was removed. No details, no names, no burial sites, just one line in a ledger, disposed. The nuns of Modon vanished from history. 18 women who had walked 7 days through hell, crossed the sea in chains, carved prayers into stone, gone. But their chapel remained. A French diplomat in 1712 wrote that older palace servants claimed that on certain nights, if one stood in the lower halls, the air grew cold and faint, Latin singing could be heard. He dismissed it as superstition. The walls do not lie. In 2011, when archaeologists examined the chapel more closely, they found wax traces, not from Ottoman candles, but older, mixed with herbs, the type nuns made in convents. They had kept their vigil far longer than anyone imagined. Months, maybe years, carving crosses, whispering prayers, refusing to disappear. Sister Theodosia's bird was the last mark on the wall. Beside it, faintly scratched, almost invisible, 2 words in Greek, "We endure." But the truth is, they didn't just endure. They left something the empire could not erase. A room full of crosses, prayers carved in stone, proof that faith could survive where walls and chains could not. The Ottoman Empire lasted until 1922, over 400 years of conquest and power. Yet in the end, it was those scratches on the stone that survived. Not the Sultan's decrees, not the ledgers of Hassan Pasha, not the silk in which they dressed Sister Helena. Just words and marks carved by women the world had forgotten. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. So why does this story matter? Because it isn't about religion. It isn't even about the Ottomans. It's about what power does when it tries to erase people, and what happens when those people refuse to disappear. The empire conquered 3 continents, rewrote maps, languages, entire cultures, turned the greatest cathedral in Christendom into a mosque, ruled from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia. But it could not erase 18 women who carved prayers into stone. Think about that. An empire with armies, cannons, endless resources, and the will to reshape the world versus women with nothing but fingernails and faith. And the women won, not in ways measured by empires. They didn't reclaim their convent. They didn't convert their captors. They didn't live to see freedom, but they left a mark. History is written by the victors. Memory is written by the survivors. And sometimes survival looks like a cross carved in the dark, where no one was supposed to see it. A prayer whispered in a language the conquerors tried to silence. A bird scratched into stone to remember sisters who fell. Centuries later, we found it anyway. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." These women lived forward into darkness. walked 7 days knowing they might not survive, crossed the sea in chains knowing what waited on the other side, descended into tunnels beneath a palace knowing they might never see sunlight again. Yet they carved their prayers anyway, trusting that someone, someday, would look backward and find them. You just did. In 2011, when archaeologists stood in that hidden chapel staring at the crosses, one asked a question that haunts me. How long did they keep the vigil? The wax traces suggest years. The depth of some carvings indicates desperate, repeated effort. These women gathered night after night, year after year, in absolute darkness and refused to stop believing, even when sisters disappeared, even when the scratches on the wall stopped growing, even when hope should have died, they kept carving. That's not just faith, that's defiance in its purest form. The Ottoman Empire is gone, its sultans are dust, its armies are memory. The palace still stands, but now as a museum. Tourists walk its halls, unaware of what lies beneath their feet, yet those crosses remain. And that Latin phrase, barely visible after 500 years, still speaks lux in tenebris lucet, the light shines in the darkness. It comes from the Gospel of John, a verse about light that cannot be extinguished, about truth that survives when everything else is taken away. Sister Theodosia carved those words, knowing she would never leave the palace, knowing her name would be forgotten, knowing the world would move on without her. Yet she carved them anyway, understanding something empires never do: you can conquer land, rewrite history, erase names from ledgers, bury bodies in unmarked graves. But you cannot kill what people carry inside them, and you cannot silence what they carve into stone. You've just witnessed one of history's darkest truths. If stories like this remind you how fragile humanity is, how easily voices can be erased, then subscribe to Grim History and keep the past alive. Some voices deserve to be heard, even if they were silenced centuries ago, especially then. The nuns of Modon were meant to disappear. That was the plan. Erase them, break them, turn them into ghosts or converts or footnotes in Ottoman ledgers. But they didn't disappear. They're still here in those crosses, in that Latin phrase carved in the chapel that archaeologists found 500 years later. And now they're here with you because you listened, because you remembered, because you refused to let their silence be the final word. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome.